we are going to transition to the wheel of offensive linemen. And John, again, because we don't trust my production skills, John again was spearheading this one. You had what, like 18 or 20 names of the defensive linemen last time, right?
Yeah, I think we're about the same this time around as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And last one was titled Give Trey Help. And this one now is in all caps, Guard Burrow. So run us through how many you got here and who's on here.
I think we're at about 17, 18. I actually didn't count fully. I tried to make it about equal to what we had for defensive linemen last time. But this list includes offensive linemen that could be drafted in the third, maybe even the fourth round. Like, I don't think we know for sure when the Bengals would take an offensive lineman. I think they would want to take one in round 2 or at the latest round 3, but maybe there's a scenario where they go to round 4. So I included a handful of names that could be in that range as well.
Okay. You gonna kick it off for us?
Let's go ahead and spin that wheel. And name number 1 is gonna be Ozzie Trapillo, I believe. Nope. False alarm. The only center on this list, Jared Wilson from Georgia.
Jared, go for it.
Yeah, Jared Wilson from Georgia. There's been some talk about him potentially even going into the first round because outside of Gray Zabel, who I just realized is not even on this list, and that was a glaring omission on my part. In fact, I'm going to add him to the list now that I think about it. So
look at you.
This is a great way to just adjust and correct something that shouldn't have been corrected in the first place. Yeah. Jared Wilson, though, is probably the second best center in this class behind Gray Zabel from Georgia, one of the best athletes overall in this class, a part of a really strong and stout interior offensive line for Georgia. So much has been said about how that program trains players, develops players, specifically on the offensive line. We heard a lot about it with Amarius Mims last year, but the practices at Georgia are typically tougher than the actual games. Like they train those guys in practices throughout the week. So then when the games come on, it's just relatively easy. And that's typically what you see in terms of production profiles for these Georgia offensive linemen. And when Jared Wilson, who is really stout in pass protection, but can also get after it in the run game, he can move out of his stance. He can get out to the second level. There's not a lot of bad things about Jared Wilson. And I think he's been kind of lost in the shuffle for this offensive line class because either from prospect fatigue or the fact that he's not the biggest guy, he doesn't have the greatest length at the position, but high-end athlete who can definitely hold his own at the point of attack would be a very solid day 2 pick. And I think for the Bengals, it's not out of the question that they could draft a guy like Wilson to maybe take Ted Karras' spot next year, but I think he also has the body and the ability to play either guard spot. And I think if they view him as having that positional versatility, he could be one of these backup plans in the second round if their guard tackle type is not available to them.
That's what I was going to start with is, the potential of playing guard and center. An early RAS score for Jared Wilson was 9.98. The height being a little shorter, weight at 310 was good. The speed grade, he didn't do the other agility testing, the cone stuff, but the explosion grade elite, the composite speed grade elite, courtesy of Kentley Platt, aka Math Bomb. A 4 point, I think it was like 4.84 was the 40. So moves really well. And a guy, again, if you think he can give you positional versatility and do what we talked about with Ursary and others, where you start out as a guard and then, as one of your entrenched starters maybe ages out of playing, that's your heir apparent for his primary position at Georgia. And I swear you must have been on that call with me with Daniel Jeremiah, because he specifically said that about Georgia today and their practices. And he's like, I love Georgia players. They come in with an intensity. Sometimes they come in a little bit more beat up than because of the practices in the conference they play in, but they are ready to play. They play in NFL schemes, et cetera, et cetera. So this is, this again, not a name that we've talked about a ton, but if that pick was made and made relatively early, I think it would make a lot of sense for this team. And that the Bengals love those Georgia Bulldogs. He is a junior. He is younger, 21, I believe. I don't have his exact birth date in front of me. I don't know.
Turns 22 in June.
Okay. So yeah, still on the younger side. And like I said, the RAS was outstanding. There are some, like you said, arm size concerns a little bit, but the athleticism is there, and I think he could potentially be groomed into a really solid player. And then we talked about this with Tate Ratledge, John, just that connection with Amarius Mims and playing with Amarius Mims at Georgia, having some semblance of continuity from college to pro. That's also just an additional perk.
Bengals also met with him at the combine. They had both Dan Pitcher and Scott Peters, the offensive line coach, down for Georgia's pro day to observe some of these offensive linemen. So he's obviously not the only one on this wheel. He's not the only one in consideration, but yeah, a lot of those things make sense. And it wouldn't be too shocking because his floor, even as a one-year starter at Georgia, is very high. And I think NFL teams are really high on him. So